Palace, away from home at your place, they didn't do very well. 3-1 defeat, even though they took the lead.
Harsh.
But if you look at it statistically, you dominated the game. Possession, territory, all of that kind of thing, which is not uncommon with Spurs. You still give away chances at the other end.
I'm going to correct you on that.
Go on.
Because we were much better defensively.
No, but this is what I'm saying. You dominated the game.
Yeah, Palace didn't really have a sniff.
No, that's what I'm saying.
They scored a brilliant goal, which is a complete individual goal of Eze running at us, winning the free kick himself, and then burying the free kick himself. The game disappeared somewhat for Palace with him going off. And then, by the way, very importantly, when Adam Wharton went off, it was still 1-0 as well. And any little bit of control they did have in the midfield, which was very minimal, as you can see from the possession statistics, completely disappeared. But what I mean is, in the little bits that they did have it, he's an intelligent player. They just couldn't. They just got swarmed once he went off as well. Once we equalised, you kind of knew we were going to win.
Yep. You probably felt that even before as well, that you still had a lot more attacking.
There was a moment just before we equalised where it starts hitting, you think, it's going to be one of them days. Yeah. And then I remembered we always score. And no doubt now I've said that we don't score at the weekend. And of course that sort of run's going to come to an end at some stage. It's 38 league games in a row now we've scored in.
That's decent.
We always score. And you think we're having so much territory here and they're under so much duress. But they weren't under major duress. We played better than we did against Wolves.
Yep.
But at the same time, we weren't knocking down the door. Once we equalised, we knocked down the door and you knew it was coming. For Palace, just to cover them briefly, because it's easy to get lost in Tottenham, they're another one who fixtures absolutely fine going forward, right? It's Luton at home this week. Then they go to Forest in game week 30. Might be building towards a double in 34, possibly, as discussed previously. I wonder if someone like Richards, who is definitely going to play at the moment at 3.9, comes into people's thinking. Gay's out for a couple of months. He's going to struggle to play again this season. So he 100% is staying in that team at the moment. And Daniel Munoz is one to keep an eye on. He's more expensive, but as a wing-back, he's possibly more interesting. And they're definitely going to stick with wing-backs. That said, from what I saw at the weekend, bar some very brief periods in the second half where they tried to press a little bit higher, and I think naturally fell into a routine of, this isn't a good idea, because when they did, we just cut through them. Our difficulty was when they sat deep. As soon as they came, and even if you look at Tottenham's goals, the first comes from a mistake from Anderson where there's pressure on the ball. The second is obviously ends up being a cross. And the third is us playing through them all the way from Van der Ven beats, I can't remember who it was, might have been Edouard at that point, basically in his own penalty area to carry us up the pitch. He was phenomenal again, by the way, Mickey Van der Ven. So it was only when they were higher, they were in real trouble. And it's a theme about Tottenham. I'm going to talk more on our Patreon podcast on Wednesday about how we deal with these lower blocks, because it's becoming a problem.
A problem for a lot of teams. It's not just Tottenham.
But on Palace, if I didn't know better, I could have just said that was a Roy Hodgson team at the weekend. There's definitely different bits of structure in terms of their pressing and their attempts to do it on occasion higher up the pitch, rather than just being, say, the constant low block we saw against Chelsea, which was, we're going to sit on the edge of our area, what have you got? No, it wasn't completely that, but once we kind of broke out of our third, it funneled very, very quickly into a 5-4-1 off the ball. And so I definitely think you'll still see defensive traits in them. Another thing as well is obviously there were occasions when they're trying to press, and that's not common for them. So I wouldn't be surprised if you even see a spate of substitutes scoring goals against Crystal Palace for the rest of this season. Because I think if, say, they get a victory against Luton at the weekend, they're safe then. That distance for Luton's 11 points then? It's too big, they're safe, right, at that point. And I think you might see Glasner work them harder, and it might be that they have to take a one step back for two forwards into next season. Like, start getting them ready with their pressing for next season. I think in the shorter term, they might suffer for that. Eze will obviously be a player that's perfectly reasonable for people to get, should they want to do so. For my lot, Sonny's the one at the moment why he's going to play through there, and there's no reason why he won't stay through the middle at the moment. I don't think Richarlison will be back for Fulham. I've seen this sort of thing before with players where particularly they speak to media from their own country and, I'll be back quicker than expected. I imagine Richarlison would like to go on international duty with Brazil, so doesn't want to rule himself out.
Yep.
And he probably will be back around about the point of the Fulham game, we hope. But I think even if he is, it's as a substitute rather than a starter, and enough for him to go and play for Brazil.
Yep.
Timo Werner might be one that people want to punt. In game week 29 specifically, definitely not one for this week, but I don't know, let's say we got there and you think he's going to play and Tony's unavailable or something like that, might be one that comes onto people's radar, but I would stress that's a 1-2 week kind of punt at that stage. Yes, he scored. You get the old frustration with him like that where he's missed a big chance in the first half. His first touch is incredible. It comes at him at near hip height and he manages to control it with his heel and carry it into his path. Just roll it in, mate. And he takes these little touches, never gets it out of his feet. It's like he overthinks things. He falls into that like Nunes category. You got too much time. Try and do the difficult thing. Just shift it once out your feet into your right foot and then do exactly what Son did. Exactly what Son did for the third goal is exactly what Werner should have been doing with his chance. You don't have any confidence when he gets through.
No, that's why when you say people are going to punt him this week, I'm like, why? To give yourselves grey hair or anxiety issues? I just think it's quite straightforward with Spurs. You go Son. If you can't afford Son, you go Maddison. If you can't afford Maddison and you really want to go defensive, really you go Doggy just because he's played and Porro hasn't played. But apart from that, it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
You can get one of the others if you really want, but
if it's a midfielder you're heading to and you're playing towards game week 29, for me, you're buying a West Ham player first because West Ham are playing Burnley and Tottenham are playing Villa. And I do think there'll be goals in the Tottenham Villa game, but I just think that makes way more sense if that's what you're doing. Or even a Villa player as they're playing at home, a Bailey or Douglas Luiz, for example. Yeah. I think when it comes to 29, I think Maddison will be the one that you'll want to punt. Yeah. If you want a Tottenham midfield player on top of Son. Otherwise, yeah, it's definitely Son. You know, Romero scored the most goals now of any defender this season.
Wow.
He's not the one. It's still Udogie or Porro. One, if obviously they're both fit. One big difference in terms of us defensively being more structured was the movement from the fullbacks into midfield wasn't as hyper as what it always is. And also what was happening, I've spoke about when I see little variances from Ange. I did get one a little bit where you had, particularly with Emerson Royal, starting in a midfield position and actually moving back into a fullback position to allow us to come out of beyond Palace's first line a little bit easier. We're much better defensively. It's not to say we will be in the next upcoming games. And I realise Palace at home is kind of an ideal fixture to look better defensively. But there was some little structure points that were better in terms of Tottenham and what they were going to do when they lost possession. But yeah, based on the last, basically from when Palace scored, yeah, we deserved to win the game. We did swarm them at the end.
We've got Villa this weekend.